Thank you, Celebration. Wow, do you feel the presence? Do you feel the power? It's in every breath. Every breath of your life. It never, ever, ever leaves you. Isn't that wonderful? Many of you know in my life I've had different seasons, and before UCOH, that's like BC, before UCOH, there was a season in my life where I was a single mom, and Cody and I were kind of doing life on our own, and we would read all of these books together, walk together, talk together, had great times together. And when we were reading like the Chronicles of Narnia series and the Harry Potter series, he and I would take time apart. And when he was very young in this process, he said at the end of a chapter, he said, "Mom, we need a chapter book stopper." And I was like, "Oh yeah, a bookmark. We need a bookmark." That's a chapter book stopper. I bring that up because we are in a series with chapters in it, and it's called Life Lessons. And YOU started it off with a great kick last week, and this week we're going to the next chapter. Next week we're going to go to the next chapter. And it says somewhere I've read or heard that the two things that most profoundly impact us are the books we read and the people that we meet. And the reason that is because we've invested our lives in being who we are and learning life's lessons that we are to learn, and there is a gift in that for each and every one of us. In that season of aloneness with Cody and I would go to the gym, and I would dance my prayers in the jazzercise room with the lights off, my headset on so nobody could see me. And when we moved here, my girlfriend, who is also a minister, knew that I loved to dance, and I had this statue of this glorious dancer that she was just like this. And it was my most heartfelt possession. And I was moving it into my office, and I was moving things around, and it fell and it broke. Yeah, and I was like, it was heart-wrenching. And Tammy Lorraine came in, and she said, she was sweeping it up, and I'm like, I'm not really sure why that had to happen, but it happened, so it must have been needed to happen. Well, Tammy, in her loving kindness, God bless you, sweet angel of a soul, at Christmas time, bought me this statue, and it's two people, and they're dancing together. And she wrote a poem with this sweet, beautiful gift of love. This is care, by the way, love and care. And she said, the reason that statue had to break is because you're no longer dancing alone. You're dancing with others. Yes. First dancing with Brian as my partner, thank you, love, and now dancing with each and every single one of you. We get the joy of being in this together and learning how to do life in connection. So each chapter that we go through, we're going to get the joy of experiencing the beauty of the soul to your right and to your left. And while we're only able to capsulize on a few of them, the gold that lies within this sanctuary is beyond your comprehension. I wish you could know everybody at the level we do. We had the joy of going to Joan Howes, the matriarch, the conceiver and the holder and the gestator of the idea of Unity Church of the Hills, along with her husband, Fred Howes, who got the idea to bring this church into reality. So each and every one of us here have been blessed by their lives. We went to their house, we sat down, we had some time to just connect our hearts and feel the love that radiates from her heart. And we wanted to share that with you, so we're bringing you to her living room with 4 short videos this morning. Let's hear from Joan.
We had a print shop in Michigan, and some of the people from the church started coming in to have work done. And one day we started reading what we were printing. We didn't often do that because we were too busy, as long as it didn't look like something obscene or whatever, we didn't really pay much attention to it. But the printed word got to us, as did the people who came in. I said to Fred one day, those people from Unity have something I want. There was a tranquility, a serenity, a feeling, an aura that was so apparent that we started going over to Unity. When we came here, we wanted so much to have a church like our Unity Church in Michigan, where Jack Boland was the pastor, and he was truly one of a kind, as you know. But he inspired us so much in more ways than I can count. But we were discouraged when we got here because there wasn't anything like that. And it was sad because it was such an important part of our lives. In fact, that was one of the few things we hated to leave behind, the community of Church of Today. And we looked at many, many churches, not just Unity, but all denominations around here, to see if any church had that feeling that we wanted so much. And it didn't happen. And so I wrote to Unity Village to see, but only after a lot of waffling. I often think, in a way, it was a little bit like Job not wanting to go to Nineveh, because it sounded like an awful lot of work to start a church. You know, Joanne Landreth had sent us a packet about that thick of things that needed to be done. And it's, where do I start kind of thing. And so we kind of thought, well, that would be nice, but we don't really know what to do. And when you know that something is right, God keeps nudging you until you do something about it. And that's what happened. He kept after us and after us until we moved our feet and really started taking on all of the things that needed to be done. And it was just miraculous because everything fell into place because we got out of the way. We started doing what we could do, and then, God, it's yours, help us. And he did. And everything just miraculously happened to make it come about. The right people, the right facilities, the right feeling, which is what we wanted so much. The feeling of love and acceptance that we all still feel today. You recognize kindred souls. And this is why people come back. They talk about the love they feel when they come in, and they want to be a part of it, and they want to feel that wonderful feeling of love and acceptance. It's something that's really beyond words. It's more of a feeling. When you really care about someone, they feel it and respond in kind. It just makes everything a lot better.
You know, there's sometimes you like, how do I know what's mine to do? Well, there's sometimes a knowingness that it's just you know. It's hard to describe. And if we understand, like Becca articulated last week, mind, divine mind, God, Holy Spirit, plants an idea into our minds. And if we express on that idea, we have the opportunity to experience a joy that we wouldn't otherwise be able to experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so, you know, Joan walked in this. Years ago, I was part of a book study in San Diego before I went to seminary. And members of the book study were like, hey, this is so awesome. Let's make a church. We're like, yeah. And everybody started going, me. And I'm like, no. And I'm not ready. And, you know, but it's a daunting task. And I'm really grateful that Joan and Fred followed through. Yes. And then they just started taking that first step. How do you walk across the country? One step at a time. As soon as the momentum goes, things start coming into place. So we're going to watch another video of Joan and see what she tells us this time.
Well, I was one of the really fortunate children of the world. My parents were very loving and caring, and I never had to go through therapy to find out, you know, all the damage they supposedly did to me. They were so supportive always there, always encouraging. And they helped me to explore talents that I might have been given. And they taught me early on that when we're given a talent, God expects us to use it. And if we don't, it disappears like smoke. And so in everything that I've tried to do it as well as I possibly could. Yeah, and I think that's the job of all of us, to do what we can to make the world better by using the talents we've been given. When you do your best, all kinds of rewards flow in. And after we have reached the limit of what we think we can do, God gives us a chance to expand. There is no limit. When I started the quilt project, it was at the time we built the educational building. And I had been widowed and I didn't have a whole lot of extra money, but I did have fabric. So I went to the board through Steve and said I would like to support the church with quilting if they would like it. And they said, well, that might work. So I was thinking, well, maybe 100 quilts or something like that, which would be a major undertaking. And so it was announced a couple of weeks later that I was making 200 quilts. And I thought, well, okay, I can make that happen. And I'm now at 370 and still going strong. As long as people want them and want to support the church through them, each quilt has a lot of love sewn into it. It's been a real gift to me because when I quilt, it's meditation time. And I hope people are feeling the love that's in the quilts because it's definitely sewn into every stitch. I wanted people to feel the love that exists in the church through the fabric that they receive.
For you, you may have missed it, but she's made over 370 quilts. Can you imagine that? And did you get an idea of how long it took from, okay, well, I asked her in the first service. She usually sits over here, so I keep looking over here for her. But I said, does it take more than 10 hours? And she goes, oh, yeah, more than 10 hours. So I'm not sure how long, but I can do 10 math right now with this moving brain of mine. So if we multiply that out, that's 3,700 hours multiplied by more, because it's more than that, of this widow's mite, who has taken the fabric that she had on hand to support the community that she loves with the talent that she has. And this is the love of God made manifest through the stitching of fabric together. And you know what she told me when we were out there in her living room looking at that studio with all of that cool stuff everywhere? She's never had to rip a stitch. Have you ever sewed anything? Anything? Have you put a button on? I have. And I've not done such a good job. This is her love. This is her meditation. It is her prayer. It is her service and our love to us. And it's her time. It's her life invested, her energy invested. And when you include love in that, it's caring. And I want you to feel that today. This is the message, that when time and energy is invested as Spirit guides you with love, you bring into the world something bigger than you ever thought was even possible. A business, a parent, a teacher, an accountant, whatever is yours to do. When you invest your love and your care and your time in the world, you bring forth something greater than you could have ever conceived. And as Joan said in her wisdom, that it brings forth bigger than you could have ever imagined. Let's see what else Joan is interested in besides quilting.
Well, this was a project that Fred's sister and I worked on together. She was the custodian of family letters ranging from 1830 to the 1930, roughly 100 years. And People communicated through the written word then because that was the only thing they had. It's so sad that now you hit the delete button and it's all gone. But these letters were so precious. It was almost like time travel. It took me back 100 years, and I started emotionally living that time period. These letters were so real, and I felt as though I knew the people who wrote them. So many stories of young men who were lost at sea because, of course, fishing and sea activities were crucial back then, and that was something a lot of young men did. And so many never came home again. And you think about those wonderful old houses out there with the widow's walk, where the wife would stand up there and watch for the ship to return, and all those stories about the ships that never did return. It just gave me such a strong feeling of what it was like to be living then, and the travel that was so difficult. Fred's great-grandmother traveled from New England to Wisconsin by way of horseback, horse and buggy, stagecoach, canal boat, and then a farm wagon to get to visit her sister who was homesteading in Wisconsin. So that's why when people traveled in those days, they stayed longer. They might stay 3 months, 6 months, and become part of the household, doing chores and helping out. But it was a real task to travel back then. We had hundreds of letters in this old spidery writing and ink that was fading, and I went through a lot of them with a magnifying glass just to see what they were saying, and it was so interesting. And I really identified with one of the characters. My daughter says that I'm her reincarnation. I even have the same initials that she did. She was interested in everything. Nothing crossed her path that she ignored. She was so alert to everything around her. While she was on the boat crossing the Great Lakes, or I missed the steamboat when I was telling you about all her conveyances, she was crossing Lake Michigan on a steamboat, and they stopped at an island along the way, and she collected plants and rocks from that island so that she could identify them. She became very interested in medicinal herbs and plants and how to use them in her household. When she got to Wisconsin, she stayed because they offered her a teaching position, and she was a wonderful teacher. I have some of her students' papers and comments that she wrote to them, just very engaged with her students and really a wonderful teacher, and married the president of the school board, who was Asa House. And so they established their household in Wisconsin, and she started the WCTU chapter there. She was kind of the go-to person in the neighborhood. She would tell people what medicines to use for what conditions. She taught people how to dye their fabric using the bark and the roots and the leaves and berries of plants. She was just my ideal. Really, she was a fabulous woman and had a number of children. I think she had 5. One died in infancy, and the others made it to adulthood. They knew all the classics, and she named one of her children Cicero. For example, she was very aware of the finer things in life, but she also was very practical as a frontier wife and mother.
Doesn't it feel doesn't it feel like a fireside chat living that history through Joan, a life of a woman remembering the life of her husband's great-grandmother. And what a profound remembrance of her. You know, what will be remembered of our lives? I want to share with you that in your bulletin and on the front cover is the last stanza of a poem written by Julia Ann Hayden Howes. And I'm going to read to you the very first stanza, but the title of it is The Dying Wife's Appeal. So those 4 children who were left that Joan was just talking about, she was writing this poem to those children and to her husband. She says, "Come near me, let me lay my head once more upon thy brow, and let me whisper in thine ear love's last and finest vow. The lips that breathe these trembling words will soon be cold in death, and thy dear cheek will feed no more their warmth and loving breath." It's about a woman who was dying of tuberculosis, and she knew that her husband was going to marry again. And she wanted to share her love with her family in this form that would stay with them even as she departed to go to somewhere even greater. The last stanza talks about how love is eternal and how they will join her. Your life, your heart, your care, your joy, your time, and your energy are your gift. And what will you create with it while you are here? And will it build a lasting legacy? Are you interested in what's happening around you? Are you interested in the soul to your right and to your left, and in willing to take time to get to know them? There is a warmth of care available to you, a warmth of love that a tweet or a Snapchat or a Instagram will not fulfill, and it will not last. But the person to your right and your left, in front and behind, will. Let's see what else Joan brings to us.
This is one of the great losses we've suffered through technology, the individual connection with each other. I still prefer the handwritten note, the telephone call, rather than email. It's just so much more human and not detached. It's so easy to type something on the keyboard, but it takes time and caring to sit down and write a note. And you know, that's getting lost. And it's also the spot thing, like the strobe lights. That's how life is. It's a series of strobe lights now. There's a flash here, and it's gone. Another flash, and it's gone. And nothing lasting comes out of it. Even in the music, there's nothing tender about rock. You know, it's all about the beat. It's all about the frenetic energy, not the be still and know kind of thing. It sometimes makes me laugh to realize that we have all these plans of things that we want to make happen in the world. And I can just see God sitting there smiling and saying, it's going to be so much better than you even imagine. I can do that and much more, if we get out of the way and let him work through us. That's the key to everything. You know, put our ego aside and try to let God guide our footsteps wherever we go, whatever we do.
Thank you, Joan. In your bulletin, there are 4 different types of postcards, and why not write somebody special a note, do something lasting, invest into somebody's life, old school, amen? By the way, Kristen's jacket was made by Joan. She makes jackets and handbags also. So we're so blessed. This is the end of that talk, and so this is an opportunity. You know, I had talked a couple of weeks ago. Come on up, Gene. about, this process, this maturation process that we have on the spiritual journey. And there's a tipping point where we begin investing into the lives of those people around us. So we're no longer in receivership, but we're investing into the souls around us. And it's important to experience the life of the stream rather than the pond. If it's all inflowing and there's nothing outflowing, it gets a little, I'm going to say it, skanky. And so, just the experience of the water dashing into the rocks drops the sediment, and we become purified. We become pure energy as we flow. Jean, go ahead.
So we were having this conversation about the flow and the skanky pond, and what occurred to me is that abundance it's our nature. Mm-hmm. And it is what nature is. I mean, look at the leaves on a tree or the number of grains of sand, that is the way that nature expresses itself, and we are that. That is who and what we are. Mm-hmm. And so it's from that place of knowing that abundance is everywhere and I'm in it, and that I have plenty, that we so joyfully choose to give to UCOH because of what we get here, because of the love here, because of people like Joan Howes and all of that there is, that just knowing that there is more than enough can make such a difference in our lives. And then giving from that place